Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, that's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Rewind, the show where we rewind the clock a little bit and look at some older films. Sometimes we look at newer stuff, and that's the case with this week. We're doing both. We're going to be looking at Terminator Genisys, and we're also going to be looking at the newest in-piece into the Terminator franchise. I call it an in-piece because every time you watch one of these Terminator movies, it looks like it's going to be the complete end of the franchise. And for some reason, it always comes back. Schwarzenegger always says, "I'll be back," and he always is. In the case of Terminator Genisys, it is the first of two sequels that is lauded by James Cameron as a return to form much more closely linked to Judgment Day and the original Terminator. In 1984, is that the correct date for?
That was the first one, yeah.
That was the first one? Okay.
Which one is Judgment Day?
Judgment Day is the one from 92.
Oh, that's Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know it as Terminator 2. I did not know it as Judgment Day.
Yeah. So Terminator Genisys was directed by Alan Taylor, who is very well known from Game of Thrones fame. He also brings one of the cast members of Game of Thrones on to play Sarah Connor, Emilia Clarke. Also in this film is Jai Courtney. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a role in the film. And essentially, this Terminator movie with Jason Clarke as well is pretty much the worst reworking of a film that I've seen in recent years. Except for we still have one other one to go after this, so I don't know if I can truly say that. The thing is, Courtney and Clarke have no chemistry.
Oh, so we're already into what's wrong with this movie?
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about what happens in the movie?
I mean, okay, let me just say this. The plot centers around a Sarah Connor who was pre-prepared for Judgment Day and Skynet by T-800 named Pops. And Pops and Sarah Connor have been waiting for Kyle Reese to arrive instead of, Sarah Connor being the damsel in distress like she was in the first Terminator. The only problem is the Terminator sent back to kill Sarah is in the guise of the person that she's going to hold dear one day. And that would be John Connor, played by Jason Clarke. And for me, none of this works. The chemistry of the characters don't work at all.
Well, I'm going to give you that the chemistry of the characters don't work. I'll give you that one.
What else are you going to give me since we're going in the bad direction?
All right. So I did not like Jason Clarke is his name?
Yeah.
I did not like him as John Connor.
He was the weakest version yet, and that gives Nick Stahl the one-up from Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. And
Yeah.
Edward Furlong, too.
Yeah, it's a hard character to play because he's playing the savior of humanity. And, the movie opens with that sort of an action scene. I do like the way at the beginning of the movie they kind of take care of the entire successful rebellion against the machines in like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But he gives a very inspirational speech, and basically from that point forward he's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did a good job delivering that inspirational speech though.
He did.
But beyond that, yeah, he was trash.
Can we just call him Wooden?
Yeah.
Because that's what it really felt like throughout watching that whole movie again.
Well, no, this is tough because his character is at least part machine.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay.
So
I'll give you that.
you got to kind of back up. It's like the way Arnold Schwarzenegger plays the Terminator. It's a wooden performance. How much of that is him, and how much of that is him saying, "This is a robot. I'm going to play it like a robot."
Yeah, but the difference is Schwarzenegger can bring heart to that character based on how he reacts to other people.
Okay, good point.
I mean, look at the smile that Pops gives Emilia Clarke at any point, or the thumbs up. Any of those little intricacies sell that character. But the rest of it is landfill material. What else? You've clearly got a lot of notes on this film, so go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I'll tell you what else I didn't like about it. Well, since we're trashing on it, then I'll tell you what I liked about it.
Okay.
I didn't like that it fell into the James Bond scenario where John Connor, the bad guy, is just standing there pontificating about how he's doing what he... Well, it's not John Connor, obviously. It's, what are they called?
Skynet.
Is that what... Is it still Skynet?
I believe it's Skynet under a guise of something else, just
Yeah.
like the one we're going to talk about later.
Right. So they keep changing the name. So, he stands there and just pontificates about what he's doing and why he's doing it and doesn't kill them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I just, to me, that's totally out of the James Bond playbook.
Yep.
The bad guy just stands there and talks until the good guys can figure out something.
Yeah.
Right. Now, interesting note, they did not really get into the idea that he was back in time and he could have effectively killed his own parents.
Could have done, but didn't.
But if he had, he would disappear.
Right. And
So, they kind of didn't deal with that situation. I felt like that was a missed opportunity.
yeah, like you have an opportunity to do some sort of self-preservation thing, and you just don't do it, but you don't kill them either. It's a
Right.
a weird standstill.
Yeah, I know, but at least it gives you like an actual plot, reason to say, I can't kill you because you're actually my parents, and if I kill you, then I don't exist to come back to kill you.
Yeah.
Right? So you get one of those time travel debatable things. But I like that. I felt like they could have used that as a reason for him not to kill them instead of him just talking all the time,
Right.
which just got old.
I also didn't like Amelia Clark. Didn't believe her as Sarah Connor for 1 minute. And everybody says, oh, it's because she's short. She's a short actress, so she doesn't have the stature.
Linda Hamilton's not tall.
No, Linda Hamilton's not tall. The difference between the two is Linda Hamilton, regardless of whether she was meek and afraid in the original Terminator or who she was in Judgment Day or who she continues to be in Dark Fate, you look at her face and you know that woman is in charge.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is there's a sternness to her, but it's a believable sternness
Okay.
of a woman who's been through some crap. The one we get in Terminator Genisys, while she's not meek and she's all serious, it's serious to a point of, I don't really believe I can like you. Where you had Linda Hamilton basically playing a mother figure
Right.
to John and showing a little bit of care.
Right. I think you're right that the Sarah Connor in what's her name, Amelia Clark?
Yes.
She lacks empathy.
Mhm.
To the point where the audience actually cares about her character. But I think you're right. Linda Hamilton is a more rounded character because there's parts about her. She's in command, and yet you like her. She has a soft spot. So I agree with you that she's more of a one-note character.
And I want to point to a very specific scene in the film that demonstrates this.
Yeah.
When they're in the tunnels and the T-1000 liquid Terminator is trying to kill them and it turns itself into Kyle Reese.
Yeah.
She shoots who she believes
Is the Terminator.
is the Terminator in the foot and he liquefies.
Yeah.
And then Kyle Reese says, hey, how'd you know it was going to be me? And she's like, I didn't.
Right.
But there's no...
But don't you think that was just in there for comedic effect?
Yeah, but it's bad comedic effect, and that's the problem.
Yeah, there were a couple ones. I think the funniest part of the movie to me was the one where they're getting ready to go back to the future through the second time travel.
Right?
And she says, you have to be naked. And he goes, yeah, I know how time travel works.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that line.
I mean, the problem with this movie is it wasn't fun.
I'm going to disagree about the beginning of it.
The beginning's fine. The beginning's great.
The beginning was, I love the beginning, and then what I liked that was fun about the beginning was the way it played with the Terminator storyline from the first one.
Yes.
And I think that's what, when James Cameron was so positive about this one, that's what he was reflecting on is, it starts and it looks like, oh, I see, this is like a Back to the Future, I'm watching the other side of the first one, from a different angle, but it's the same thing. And then it goes zoop in a different direction, and like you mentioned, and this part, now we're going to get into the time travel part, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that somebody has gone back further in the past,
Yeah.
sent the Terminator that befriends Sarah Connor when
Right.
she's 9, like you referenced,
Right.
and protects her, changes the future so that when Kyle Reese goes back to the past that he thinks he's going back to, it's different.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's
I love their willingness to do that.
So can we just say this great concept poorly executed?
Sure, I'll go with you on that. I think parts of it were executed okay. The chases were pretty good. I mean, that's the meat and potatoes of the Terminator movie.
The school bus chase was not that great, though.
You didn't like that?
I mean, you gotta suspend disbelief, but it's not like I was rooting for these characters to survive.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is Terminator 1 and 2, you're rooting for them to survive. Even in Terminator 3, the one that nobody likes, I'm rooting for them to survive.
You weren't rooting for them to survive?
I was in Terminator 3.
But in this one, in Genisys?
Nope, did not care.
You were rooting for the Terminator.
Did not care one iota whether they lived or died.
Hang on now. Even that, I think you and I are going to disagree on this movie, because I think even the school bus shot was cool, because Reese kind of wakes up and you get that shot where you're looking down through the back of the school bus that isn't there, several hundred feet to the water.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
Just struck me as unbelievable. But I want to know, do you... I know.
Liquid metal that can,
shape shift.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell the audience, would you recommend this film?
Would I recommend this film? Okay, so if you want to see the entire Terminator saga, absolutely, because I would say this is probably in the bottom half of the Terminator movies, but not by far the worst one.
Okay. I would not recommend this movie based on the fact that, again, characters have no chemistry, that's a problem. You don't execute your story well, even though there's a clever concept there, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And lastly, you give Arnold Schwarzenegger enough to do, but, he does the same thing he did in Terminator 3, basically, which is he uses, actually they do that every movie now that I think about it. The fuel cell bomb trick.
Yeah.
Did it again.
Well, it works every time.
I mean, if you're Skynet or whatever the company is going to be called, wouldn't you find a workaround for that after the second or third try? I don't understand.
Well, see, they don't know that it's so effective because nobody is able to report back to them because it works.
This is true.
I don't know. I'm just trying to.
This is true.
Bring some logic to the time
That's a very valid point out of all the points you made for this movie.
Yeah. All right, I'll get one.
All right, you get one. So we would not at all recommend. Well, I wouldn't recommend Terminator Genisys.
And I would say if you want to make your Terminator series complete, go ahead and include it in. We're going to take a quick break and be right back.
And we're back. So the next film that I want to talk about, and we should talk about because we both saw it, is...
The best reason to talk about it.
For this movie, yes. Is Terminator Dark Fate. And I'm going to hand it to Sanford to tell you the characters and the plot.
All right. So in Terminator Dark Fate, we start in a future world in which someone has been sent back to protect the savior of humanity from a Terminator, except things are different. So in this case, the person who's sent back, her name is Grace, and she is not a robot or a human, she is an augmented person. So we learn this about her later, but essentially she was a soldier who was horribly wounded and decided to give her body over to be an augmented warrior. And now we meet her and she has incredible powers for a human, although obviously can't quite stand out to a liquid metal Terminator. Now, needless to say, also back is the Terminator, in this case, in the guise of starting off a man who we don't even know who it is. So the movie takes place in the current timeline. And what sets this movie apart from the beginning is that, first of all, we get a flashback to see what's up with Sarah Connor, and we learned right off the bat of this movie that John Connor has been killed. Mm-hmm. So it's actually an interesting twist on the entire Terminator timeline. Sarah Connor and her son have successfully, in the prior movies, averted what they knew as the Judgment Day in 1997, and soon after that, John Connor is killed. This sets into motion a new future. And from that new future, people have now gone back in time to focus on a new person, a woman who is a young, she's a young woman in Mexico. Her name is Dani, and she becomes the main focus of the rest of the movie. Now, Grace is sent back in time to protect Dani, and there's some wonderful scenes at the beginning where she is introduced to her, and things happen very quickly for a while. And actually, this movie moves pretty fast once the things start up. Dani is being pursued by the Terminator. People die all around her, and Grace and her keep each other moving. And one of the things I liked about that was that because Grace is part human, she has weaknesses and needs more assistance than the Terminator. Now, through the rest of the movie, though, they meet up with Sarah Connor, who is now on her own, without her son John, hunting down Terminators who apparently are being sent back periodically through time.
Correct.
So, things transpire. There's some good set pieces as they go from Mexico into Texas and meet up with who turns out to be the mystery person assisting Sarah Connor in her hunt for the Terminators, who is Carl. And do you want to explain who Carl is?
Carl is the T-800 who murdered John Connor and felt bad about it.
Right. So he joins up with the crew in terms of protecting Dani, who we are told by Sarah Connor in an extended scene, Sarah understands that Dani is very much like herself, this person who needs to be protected, because Sarah believes that Dani will be giving birth to the new leader of the Resistance. Except, spoiler alert,
not true at all.
We find out that Dani actually is the leader of the Resistance. And actually, really interesting resolution to that. I really enjoyed the way that they resolved that plot line.
I did too.
So the movie continues, and there's some big action scenes, lots of explosions. The Terminator pursues them through the air, through the water. No, I guess not water, but ground.
Yeah.
And also I think this was actually one of the parts I liked the most. Pursues them through electronics.
Yep.
So their use of cell phones and surveillance cameras are all part of the plot of how the Terminator tracks Dani down to the final fight, which occurs, as always, inside of a big industrial place.
Yeah.
It's a nice toss back to Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. But the movie winds up in the same place that most of the Terminator ones wind up. As far as we're concerned, things seem safe, but as you alluded to at the beginning of this show, that doesn't last for long. Much like the way we feel that Terminator is actually killed and then he brings himself back together as the liquid metal and comes back, this movie leaves us with the sense that he'll be back.
And I will say, when the trailers for this film dropped, I was super excited. Not for the fact that James Cameron, for the second time in a few short years, lauded this as the real, honest Terminator 2 sequel. Except this time, he might have been right. I like these people. I like these characters. I like Dani and Dani's interactions with all the other characters. I like the way Sarah handles time with Dani. I like Grace and how, as you said, she's vulnerable, more vulnerable than a normal Terminator, but she still has the empathy within her. So you're watching this tag team group of 3 girls, women, my apologies, women, really work to take down this Terminator. And it's great. And then Carl joins the fray. You're like, oh, this is kind of great. You got your own ragtag group of people, and it's awesome.
And they work as a team, which is something that we haven't seen in the prior Terminators.
Yeah, no, we hadn't seen that at all. And the fact that we get that group dynamic really makes the movie work.
Especially because the Terminator can, for some reason in this movie, he has liquid metal and a skeleton.
Yeah.
Can separate the liquid metal from the skeleton and then fight as two.
Yeah.
But what I kind of felt like they glossed over, or maybe they cut it out for time or something, there should have been some sort of thing like the liquid metal could only be so far from the skeleton, or had to be in sight, or something, like, because I just didn't really understand why it kept splitting up and then reforming.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me either. I will say that the real crux of why this movie works, everybody says, oh, it's Linda Hamilton. No, it has nothing to do with Linda Hamilton.
She was the weakest part of this movie.
She really was, but the thing that really sold it for me is just the group dynamic overall. If you don't have that group dynamic, you're not going to root for these characters to survive. It's kind of like the sci-fi version of The Walking Dead. You've got one major, massive, really well-armed zombie going up against 4 normal individuals who want to stay alive. And
wait, in The Walking Dead, the zombies have weapons?
No, thank God.
Okay.
They did the
all right.
show.
I'm sorry, I've never seen it, so that was like.
But yeah, I really think that Dark Fate is a good movie. Despite this, it's not had the greatest box office in the world.
Well, that's a whole different discussion.
It is, but I think there's merit to discuss it. I feel like the Terminator franchise is best when you have the main characters on the run. If you have them doing their action set pieces, there's less value to it than how they keep themselves motivated to stay alive.
Well, and in this one, they're on the road. I mean, they're on the run pretty constantly. In fact, it's sort of nonstop.
Mm-hmm, and that's why it works.
Yeah, it works. But actually, some of the best scenes in the movie are, at least in my mind, the ones where they actually stop in a hotel room for a few minutes, and we learn more about the characters.
Exactly, and that's another reason why I like it, because they're on the run, but they still have those moments of solitude. There was a show, I'm going to guess it probably was 10 years ago now, they did Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, and that was the whole thing of the show. You had Sarah Connor and her teenage son going forward to the future, which I think was 2007 at that point, and basically trying to do little things to stop Skynet. And you saw them move from town to town, school to school, trying to keep John's life somewhat normal, but also trying to prepare him for Judgment Day. And It was a really good show, but it didn't get the ratings it needed to get a 3rd season.
Well, I think people might be, to a certain extent, sort of burnt out on the continual going back to the Terminator.
At this point, they're burnt out because there's not enough to make it fascinating and fun. It's either one or the other. See, this movie was fascinating.
Yeah, it wasn't really fun.
But it wasn't fun, and I think people wanted more of the fun than they wanted the fascinating.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the only fun part is Arnold Schwarzenegger as Carl with his little deadpan jokes.
Talking about drapes.
Yeah.
I'm torn about how I feel about this movie. Would I recommend it? Would I not? I would, because I feel like this is a Terminator movie for a new generation. It's not meant for me. It's not meant for you. It's meant for the 17-year-olds that are in high school right now who want sci-fi action time travel.
Yeah. Well, and that's right. I mean, this sets the precedent that you can have a whole series of Terminator stories where, different people. So, okay, let me take a quick digression.
Yes.
I read a cool book in high school
Okay.
about time travel. It was like a fantasy book.
Right.
But one of the things that they used as a metaphor is that time is like a river. And if you throw a little pebble into the river, there's barely a blip and time just passes on and the same things essentially happen. So they were saying if you go back in time and don't really change anything, time will continue. It has its own momentum. If you throw a boulder into the water, then time is going to diverge. And eventually it will come back, it wants to go to the same place.
Right.
So I find that interesting here about the Terminator stories, because no matter what the events are that occur sort of in the future, things keep trending towards this machines versus humans showdown.
And they don't really do much to show us any of that, and I think that's the problem, because after Terminator 2, everybody's like, oh crap, I want to see what this resistance is like.
Yeah, see, that's where my problem is, because if one Terminator is as destructive as it is in any one of these movies, how does humanity stand a chance in the future where it's humankind versus machines, where they might have thousands of these Terminators. I'm sorry, I just can't buy into that. The Terminator is too powerful for me to believe there could even be a resistance. That's my problem.
I have to think on that for a second.
Yeah, I would actually rather have, you know, I mean, and that's kind of why I have this problem with the future, or sort of the one with Christian Bale, which took place in the future,
Yeah.
was because, you know, as powerful as we've seen these machines be, I don't see how there can be any real successful resistance.
I agree.
And we catch a little glimpse of that in Dark Fate, with the future scene of the combat.
Yeah, but not enough. And I think that's what people want. People want that blue-tinted future where the Terminators are just walking down, you know, giving that evil grin and, you know, destroying things, and you want to see how the Resistance fights. And you didn't really get to see much of that in any of the Terminator films except for Salvation.
Right.
I will say that in Terminator the Sarah Connor Chronicles, when you get to season 2, they reference it a lot more. So you kind of get the sense of, okay, this is what the people in the future are really honestly worried about. And then you go back to what would have been present day, and you see how that's incorporated. And it's lovely, and it's layered, and it's great. But that's the problem with the Terminator franchise as a whole, and this is how I'll cap it.
Right.
There are no layers. The idea of a machine traveling back to kill someone whose son will be the savior of humanity. James Cameron must have read a Bible in his time, because that's kind of a Bible thing.
Yeah.
You give a brilliant idea, but you don't give it layers. For Terminator Dark Fate, the layers that were given were in the group dynamic. But really, that's the only place that they were going. They're always going to course correct to what we know is the natural end of a Terminator movie.
Right.
And I want someone who says, okay, I'll make a Terminator movie, but instead of just turning it on its head with the gender dynamic, or turning it on its head and saying, we had events happen prior to this that would have changed the way this plays out. Have one that says, yeah, no, that's not the story we're going to tell at all. We're going to tell you a completely different one.
Well, that was Terminator Genisys.
And I don't agree with what they did with that film.
All right, so let's wrap up on this. Will you recommend Terminator Dark Fate?
The lightest of recommendations, just because it's a story that made sense, and there were more layers than there were in that film than in Genisys. Sanford, what do you say?
I agree. I mean, I think this one was well thought out, and it is worth seeing again just because in the sense of sort of being a completist about the Terminator canon. So with that, let us say to next time.
Next time, we hope in about 4 weeks to be reviewing the movie Parasite. We'll see if there's anything else valuable at the theater during that time. Oscar season will be upon us by then. So we will see if there's anything that piques our interest and keeps this community thriving in the world of film. Until then, we'll see you at the movies. Bye, guys.